It's already been established in the RWBY series that semblances change and evolve over time, and with sufficient training and focus, a person's aura, and by extension their semblance, can make them more than just a man, as was stated in The World of Remnant focusing on aura. Now with that, I thought it would be a good idea to go through each of the characters that we know so far and see how their semblances have progressed, and theorize as to where they will progress in the future. And I thought, fittingly, to start off this series, we'd start with the character that was originally voiced by the creator of RWBY itself, and that character being Lai Ren, voiced by Monty and now his brother. So Ren's semblance is fairly easy to understand. It masks negative emotions, which, with the RWBY world being the way it is, it's an extremely useful semblance. The first time we saw it used was when Ren was a child in his flashback story, when he was in Kuroyuri and his world was crumbling around him. His parents had just sacrificed themselves so he could survive, and he was crying and freaking out under a bridge. And then his semblance activated and he was able to calm down, think clearly, he knew what he had to do. He ran to Nora and was able to pass on the exact same ability to her while he was in contact with her. Now, I believe that was the first time his semblance actually awakened. Although he could have used it before, but I don't actually think he did. We don't actually know. The next time we saw his semblance used was in the fight against the Nukkalavi, when he used his semblance to mask Jean and Crow's emotions and prevent their detection from the Nukkalavi itself. And even just seeing it those two times, because I believe his semblance wasn't used in Volume 5 in the fight at Haven Academy. Not that I can recall, at least. Even through those two times, though, that we've seen, we can still see how his semblance could have evolved from when he was a child to where he is now. When he was a child, he had to be in physical contact with Nora to be able to pass on his semblance. But now, in the fight against the Nukkalavi, he was able to do it from a distance. So being able to project his aura, project his semblance over a longer distance in and of itself is probably a pretty great feat to be able to achieve, and something that not a lot of people can do in the RWBY series so far. And there's also another thing that could have evolved depending, but there's no real proof or reason behind this. It's just when he was a kid and he was protecting Nora, the Nevermore that was on top of the building just couldn't detect them, couldn't sense them at all. We don't know if any Grimm, if they happened to look under where Nora and Ren were, if they would have been able to see Ren and Nora at all. But in the case of the Nukkalavi, when he masked Jean and Crow, the Nukkalavi couldn't see them at all. Was standing right in front of them and could have crushed them if it sneezed the wrong way. And it didn't. It couldn't see them, it just looked around like they had just disappeared. So that also raises the question of how exactly do Grimm see and sense, but something for another video. So there's also that aspect as to whether how well he's been able to mask emotion and mask a person's presence, if that has evolved over time. But as to what his semblance may become, that's an interesting question, because at its core, Ren's semblance deals with emotion. Negative emotion specifically. But so far, all we've seen Ren do is mask negative emotion. But what about if Ren could actually produce negative emotion in another person? Now, that seems like a fairly diabolical thing to do, especially, as I mentioned, with the world of Remnant being as it is, overrun with Grimm, who are attracted to negative emotion. If Ren could either give someone negative emotion or amplify a person's negative emotion, because if you can decrease it, amplifying it seems like the next step to go, at least. If you could amplify it, that would pretty much screw over any one person. Although, if he did that to someone, for example, say Hazel, who's going berserk and everything, amplifying their emotion, his emotion, granted, would be dangerous, but if there's Grimm around that are attacking everyone, having them focus in on him would get him off of everyone else's back so they could escape, they could run away, and Hazel pretty much wouldn't be doomed to die because he's strong enough to take out all the Grimm. It would just occupy his time. Because Ren, being Ren, he's not the type of person to just amp up someone's... he's not the type of person who would amp up someone's emotions and just watch them get torn to shreds. He's not that type of person. But as a distraction or as a way to escape, that seems fitting. Or potentially, and this would likely have to be in collaboration probably with someone else, for example, say Blake's Semblance, if she makes a clone of herself and then he gives negative emotions to someone's clone. Produces emotions in something that is inanimate, essentially. But since it's a production of aura, production of semblance already, using another semblance on it to give it emotion and then have Grimm go after that clone, so again, everyone can escape, it would make sense. Beyond that, I don't really know how else Ren could evolve his semblance unless he can start dealing with things that are more than just negative emotions, that he could deal with positive emotions, other emotions, possibly start creating new emotions within other people, or get them to realize emotions that they had kept deep down inside themselves, things along that line. Overall, though, Ren's semblance is arguably one of the most useful semblances as just a regular huntsman. And by regular huntsman, I mean a huntsman who would go out on missions protecting towns from Grimm. His is probably the most useful for dealing with that. Not necessarily killing the Grimm or taking them out, but his semblance overall, he could also produce emotions in like an inanimate clone or something to lure Grimm away from a village that they were attacking or something along those lines, or be able to affect multiple people, because that's again another way that his semblance could evolve. Instead of just being able to mask two people like Jean and Crow, if he put his hand to the ground and was able to mask an entire village, that entire village's presence from Grimm, that would be a large amount of aura and a widespread area of effect for his semblance to actually mask. But again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, with sufficient training and focus, a person's aura can make them more than just a man. Granted, they showed Ozpin as the silhouette for that, but it stands to reason that a person's semblance could evolve to a point where it could be unheard of right now, because the majority of the people that we're dealing with in this series are already children. They're 19, 20, 18 and 16 in Ruby's case at the beginning of the series, and have only aged just from that point. And considering I don't think it's been more than a year, maybe a year and a half, they're still not that old and haven't trained their semblances, and their semblances are by no means at their max, so there's still a long way for them to go. So let me know what you guys think about this little mini-series that I want to start, at least going through the members of Team Ranger and Team RWBY, and potentially more people that we already know, like Glinda, Ironwood, other people as we find out their semblances, and go back to see what they could have started as, how they could have evolved to where they are, if they'll evolve further. Let me know what you guys think about this idea of a little mini-series, and let me know in the comments below as to your ideas as to what other people's semblances could have been, could evolve to be, what Ren's semblance was, what you think of my ideas. If you have any more ideas that I might have missed, let me know, and I'll try to respond to as many as I can. I'll take all your ideas into consideration, and yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.